Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Obnoxious Anonymous, and welcome to the Twin Peaks Thought of the Day. Today is Thursday, July 28th, 2022. My guest today is the creator of the Wyndham's Cabin virtual Twin Peaks event that I would say premiered, but it went live last Sunday. It's Friedrich, right?
That's correct. Yeah, Friedrich.
I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much. We're going to get to your event and what all that entails. But before we do that, I got to pick your brain. Tell me a little bit about your David Lynch Twin Peaks credentials.
Well, I mean, where do we start? I mean,
How did you discover the show? Or were you a
Sure.
Lynch fan prior to the show?
I discovered the show with the season 2 premiere back in 1990. So I was sort of a bandwagon jumper. I missed the first season, but I was caught
You
up
were
in the
too
hype.
you were too busy watching 90210. So
Yeah. Or Star Trek, more likely. But yeah, so I was caught up in the hype and the buzz surrounding Who Killed Laura Palmer over that summer. And so I tuned in for the season 2 premiere, which is phenomenal. It's probably one of my favorite episodes to this day.
how on
And I
earth
was
did you understand it? Or did you watch the when they
I
re-aired the
watched,
episodes in the summer?
Alan Thicke did something like
Yeah.
an ABC recap, and that's
With
all I had seen.
Cop Rock.
Yeah. So that was my primer for jumping into season 2. But I was just hooked. So and by the end of season 2, I was having watch parties with some friends of mine, and of course into the next year. I mean, we all know. To this day, I can recall exactly where and when I saw the finale, which they'd spliced together.
Right.
Because I had just got back from a trip to LA that weekend that it aired, and it was so obscure by that point nobody was following it. It was in a
Right,
weird
right.
time slot. ABC had
It was a
basically
Monday night movie when it
yeah
premiered as a
yeah
two-parter.
yeah. So I remember recording it on VHS and watching it after I got back from my trip. But and then into the next year with the announcement of the movie, of course,
Right.
I mean, I felt a great deal of excitement and anticipation. Um, and of course, that came out. I went to the theater opening night and sat there with 8 to 10 people, and we all sort of walked out after. I was, um, I felt like it was I'm not a religious person, but I felt like it was a spiritual experience, right? Coming out of it, it really affected me. But ultimately, I mean, that played out. We all know that it wasn't very well received, but it grew in infamy, down through the years. And Twin Peaks in general was still highly regarded for many, many years. In critic circles and things like that for being, what it was when it first came out, and it was groundbreaking, and people remembered it for that. So, fast forward to I'd never really been involved in fandom before up until 2015, after they made the announcement that season 3 was coming back. And I'd always been aware of the fest, but I'd never gone. And
Mhm.
I figured, well, if there's ever a time, now I should probably venture out there. And so I got my ticket, and I actually drove from where I'm at in Canada. It was about a 20-hour drive, and I'd never been out in that neck of the woods before. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know a soul when I showed up, but there I was, and made some really good friends that first time around. Some very precious memories of that 2015 fest was meeting Catherine Coulson,
Right.
6 weeks before she had passed, and she was such an amazing spirit to be there with us. I mean, nobody knew of her illness really. um, we suspect that she had already shot her scenes with David.
Right.
I think we'd heard that was very close and personal, and it was really only the two of them, so that knew.
Okay. Let me just pause you right there. When I heard that they had filmed, sort of these secret scenes unto themselves, I was under the impression, of course I was wrong, but I was under the impression that they shot like a bunch of like log lady introductions for the new show because he had remastered the introductions for the Blu-ray set.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, that would be a great thing. Maybe she's not in the show. Maybe she's just going to be the person who introduces each part.
Yeah.
Obviously that wasn't the case, but yeah, I mean, I interviewed her prior to shooting, and we had a long conversation about like, David hasn't done a movie or a TV show like, since the invention of the iPhone. What's he going to do if everyone's just taking pictures or recording from the sidelines? And she's like, well, we're going to have to figure that out. And, obviously you can see by the making of season 3, they had to adjust some things when things started leaking online. They had to move, change stuff up. But I'm so glad you had a chance to meet her, because she was a lovely, lovely person.
She really was. And one of my other takeaways I'll always remember, I was able to um, make the head table laugh during the dinner, uproariously. I got up and I asked a simple and succinct question of the head table, and I said, because they had announced it, right? Season 3 was coming back, so I just said, I was just wondering, thank you all for being here with us tonight, and I was wondering at what point um, alcohol consumption voids your NDAs,
Right.
so you can talk to. And yeah, so and Catherine even commented on that after when I was up getting an autograph from her. She was very sweet.
Absolutely. And I think season 3, if my understanding is correct, the longest NDAs in the history of media. I think it went about 5-6 years. So like all the way until 2020, the NDAs. So apparently they're done now. So
And it's funny because I was actually ultimately a part of that, because a couple of years later I won premiere tickets. And so I got to go to the premiere and the after party in LA, but I was under an sort of a light NDA for about 48 hours because this premiered on the Friday, whereas everybody else saw it on the Sunday.
and
So
it had already premiered at Cannes at that point, correct?
it had. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Right.
So
I
that was a
wonder
lot of
I
fun.
can't I wonder if Variety, like, wrote up a review. I can't remember. I remember when their review of Mulholland Drive came out, and they literally told the entire synopsis. I mean, they even said, 2/3 of the way through, this character becomes this character. But I had forgotten when I watched the movie, and then when it happened, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that Variety review, like, ruined everything."
Yeah,
So, all
no,
right,
it
well,
was nice.
we'll get to that in a second, because I wanna pick your brain about that. But, so I mean, between Fire Walk with Me and obviously the return being announced, a lot of dead air, a lot of dead time. Obviously Lynch was off doing other things, and Frost was doing other things, but it wasn't until, I believe it was like Ain't It Cool News. Remember that site?
Oh yeah, yeah.
They dropped some information saying that they had heard through the wind that NBC was trying to reboot Twin Peaks, which was really bizarre because that made no sense considering it was on ABC.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember then that kind of started rolling. Then Frost went to like was it USC or UCLA? It was one of those screenings, and he said, "Oh, Twin Peaks is a continuing story." So that kind of got people on board, thinking, "Okay, if they're saying this, right? I mean, at this point, something probably is happening. Who knows what?" But then I remember asking Jennifer Lynch, like, going, "Yeah, I'm hearing things." She's like, "There's nothing happening." And then she even took to like Facebook to say there is no season 3. But at that point, when she posted it, like, either they completely kept everybody in the dark, or because like, or she just knew how to keep a secret. Because at that point, if they did tell people in their immediate circle, she would have known because they were already writing it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Um, so what was your reaction when you heard it was coming back? Did you like, have to squint your eye? Like, what? Or like, is this really happening?
Well, I mean, of course, it was a shock. It was a shock for everybody. I mean, there's no doubt about it because they did keep a lid on it,
Right.
obviously for a time. And of course, the way they coordinated it with the two Twitter accounts to both um, say that Gum You Like is going to come back in style at the same time, was pretty brilliant. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, yeah, I was through the roof, right? And I remember seeing the very first uh, posters. It turns out they were fan posters, but all of this artwork started coming out of the woodwork, and it was all great. I mean, it was all spectacular, regardless. And then, of course, the excitement and enthusiasm just grew, and that's like I said, that was my first catalyst for actually going to the fest. Was after that announcement, and
And what did
and
they do at the fest, like, prior to season 3? Because obviously now, obviously they take you to, some of the season 3 locations, but prior to the fest, like, what were like the main things that they would take you to go see?
Well, it was because I was on that tour, so the announcement
Right.
had been made, but I mean, the bus tour that year was, from what I understood, because I'd never been there before, but other people had, it was very similar to each and every year, right? I mean, there was not a lot of deviation. I think there was a couple of hints along the way, um,
Well, I mean, they
that
didn't talk about Jackrabbit's palace. But
well, there was things like that. There was even just like down the street from Tweeds and around the corner to go on that long stretch of highway, you pass the new Big Trout,
right, and then obviously
right?
Nadine's shop.
Right, right. So there was things like that that were sort of alluded to and hinted at, but nothing was really, come outright
Had
and
they
say.
had they I mean, besides Catherine, they hadn't started shooting yet then.
No, that's the thing because I mean, and maybe my memory is just a little foggy, but I thought there was, as we drove past the new fat trout. I mean, it wasn't called that, but
Right.
somebody had said, and pay attention here. We can't really say what, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little foggy on things. It's been a while.
Or maybe they just saw that, because they have to announce filming permits and things like that. Maybe they saw that
I
they were
mean,
gonna
it might have even been the next year because I did go back and purchased a ticket next year, and I might have been on the bus next year after that they had
that's
been there.
probably what it was.
That's probably what it was. Is I'm remembering my second time around. I purchased a ticket the second year because they announced Julie Cruz, so I really wanted to go and see and hear all that, which was amazing and
Oh, I
phenomenal. Of course, yeah,
I can only imagine.
yeah.
So somehow you are lucky in this lottery and you get to go to the premiere. Um, okay, obviously there's the excitement, right? You're there at the premiere, you see a lot of recognizable faces. Okay. Try to remove yourself from that glorious experience. What is your initial reaction? Do you remember while it was playing? What did you think as it was going? Were you like, this is interesting? Or were you like, this is astounding? Or were you like, I don't know? Like, I mean, because obviously that first 2 hours is great, but it's like, I'm still trying to remember, like, I think I was just like processing it all in. But I mean, like, because it's so different than the original series and Fire Walk with Me. And of course, all that stuff with New York and all. Like, do you remember like what you were thinking while you were watching the first two episodes?
There is a lot of emotion and a lot of two different ends of the spectrum going on in my mind. During the very first instances and seconds of after seeing the Showtime logo and getting into it and seeing those first glimpses of a little bit of recycled footage from the original series. I mentioned after watching Firewalk that I mean it was a spiritual experience for me. I felt that same sense going into this. I couldn't believe I was there. I
Right.
couldn't believe I was privileged enough to be there in this group of people in this wonderful facility, in this moment in time. David had just been up on stage and addressed everybody,
Right.
which just I was emotional. I mean, I'll make no bones about it. I was in the moment and I was, a little weepy during those first few seconds of imagery on screen for sure. I mean, I couldn't believe that. Yeah, like I said, it was pretty eventful throughout the 2 hours. I mean, the first 2 hours will obviously for this reason alone, but um, always be. I'll have a place in my heart near and dear for that first 2 hour premiere. This was the first 2 hours that also premiered at Cannes to standing ovation, and and this was I mean I knew the history about things with Firewalk with Me where it was in 92 it wasn't well received at Cannes, and so this was it was a long road for David, and as the 18 parts played out, we saw how a lot of it was an homage to that film, right? And he said with the marketing early on, you have to see the movie going into season 3 because it and yeah, I mean the rest is
Well,
history.
well, lucky for him, he got to premiere the straight story of Mulholland Drive at Cannes in between. So
Mm.
he had generated goodwill again
Yeah, yeah. No,
with
I
them.
know, I know.
But yeah, I always maintain, and I say this with love and humor, that the real intent of season 3 was for Mark Frost to be able to incorporate Fire Walk with Me, since he wasn't involved with that,
Yeah,
into his vision, and for David to redeem Fire Walk with Me to a
yeah.
lot of. It almost seems like season 3 is like a redemption thing of like we got to make Fire Walk with Me a bridge as opposed to the strange stepchild over here.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it worked. I thought a little bit of it was a little too on point. I was taken out of the moment a few times by
During
particular
the premiere, or talking about the whole
choices.
show?
18 hours in general.
Tell me a few.
Uh, but let's come back to the first 2 hours. And
Okay.
the thing of it was afterwards. So let's jump ahead. So we'd all just sat there and we are all in the moment.
Right.
I found it a little off-putting throughout the premiere because there was probably 300 or 400 people there who
Right.
had um, not only worked on the show in front and behind of the camera, but some of their family and friends were there. And granted, our seats were pretty far back in the theater overall, but it was a little off-putting because there were moments where throughout that first 2 hours where people were chuckling because they had no idea what Twin Peaks was. They had never seen it before, and when you suddenly end up in the red room and you're talking to a magic tree,
Right.
um, there were moments where there was definitely some people who were uh, getting getting a good laugh out of things. But whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But when
I
it
think they were
ended,
I think they were laughing because of they saw the online drama with Michael J. Anderson.
well, that too. And then we all knew how that played out, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, I mean, that could have been a little bit as well as that was a little, you know, in his face. But afterwards, I mean, it was all such a blur. And I mean, we were outside, and they were loading us on buses to go down to the after party, which is only about 5 blocks down from the Ace Theater to a place called Clifton's, which is amazing. I think they held as well the Missing Pieces premiere and
Right.
after party at Clifton's, and it's just this amazing 3 or 4 story facility open throughout the center, and there's a giant tree it's very Twin Peaks esque. Like
Right.
it evokes that, that sort of theme and atmosphere for sure. So yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, that was probably, I mean, that was my 20 minutes of fame. I mean, I'll never forget it. That was my moment.
Come
Yeah,
on, we're gonna talk about Wyndham's Cabin in a little bit. That's that.
well,
But well, just real quick, I just gotta say, obviously, I wasn't there for the premiere, but I had sort of a similar thing in terms of obviously not being around all these people. But when I saw it, they played because I watched it on the Showtime app as opposed to like the channel. So I literally watched episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 right in a row that first night. A lot of people who didn't have the app had to wait another week to see 3 and 4, but I saw, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was really overwhelming because those first 4 episodes, it was like basically like watching two Fire Walk with Me's back to back,
yeah,
right? It's like, okay, I haven't seen Twin Peaks in 25 years, and here's 4 more hours.
yeah,
And I remember just being at the end, like I turned on my phone and just did a live stream. Like I don't even know how to respond, but I feel like oh my god, like they actually didn't waste this opportunity that they actually it looked like, because I was thinking about that scene between Gore and Albert, when it's all blue and stuff. They're talking about, about Blue Rose and stuff. I was like, that's a real conversation. That's not like, okay, let's just name drop Blue Rose. Like I don't know, it just seemed like it was really written and directed, and it's like they went in 110%, right? And this was, prior to like, Dougie for 10 episodes. But still though, I was like, I couldn't believe it. I felt like, wow, they really didn't waste this opportunity, and I was super happy. And overall, I really, really like season 3. Sometimes I feel like it's not as rewatchable as the first 2 seasons of the movie, but I do really like it. I think it's one of those things where it's because it's so new that even 5 years later, you feel like you're still processing it.
there was a lot going on. And just to echo your sentiment there, and I recall, and I was even reminded on Sunday when I was listening to John Thorne. John Thorne was there,
Right.
and we had breakfast the next day. And I remember discussing with John, first initial thoughts and impressions, and even his story the other day of getting up when the house lights came up, and Mark Frost passing him, saying it only gets going from here, things like that. We were all sort of sharing that same sentiment because, I mean, although there was a lot going on, I mean, it just, there could have been so many possibilities. And how it ultimately played out, you know, is up to your own interpretation as to whether or not it was enjoyable, if it was worth it, if there was a payoff at the end, or not. But the fact of the matter is, those first 2 hours, I think, captivated, and I will say 4 hours as well, because yeah, I saw 3 and 4 that same weekend,
Right.
because from LA I went to Snoqualmie, and then yeah, watched the premiere with everybody. Had to keep my lips shut, of course. But then we watched three and
Who'd
four,
you watch the premiere with up there?
we were at the Salish, and John Neff was there.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was a bunch of people that had rented like the, and it was, you see, the other thing that was, I had to really keep a lid on it, is that we were in like a corner suite uh, at the Salish overlooking the falls.
Right.
And if you remember the opening shot from season 3, I had already seen that and been there. And then to be there in person, but not be able to say anything to anyone.
Did they know that you had been, or did
Yeah,
you keep
yeah,
that? Okay. Okay.
yeah. So they all knew, and they were watching my travels and things like that. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, it played out the way it did for a lot of people. And I I guess ultimately I'll say one thing going into season 3, and I think I called it fairly accurately, and I said that season 3 was going to be very divisive, and
Mm.
as a fan, you were either going to love it or hate it, and that it could forge a couple of wedges between people, and I think it did that for sure.
My only prediction, well, I had a few, but I was wrong on most of them. But the one that I wasn't wrong, I said at the end of this thing, Laura Palmer is probably going to be alive. And the reason why I based that, because I remember there was an interview that Cheryl Lee did with Arsenio Hall a long time ago when she was promoting Fire Walk with Me, and she
Yeah,
says that David lives to kill her and bring her back, kill her and bring her back. And so I was like, okay, she's dead. She's dead in the pilot. He brings her back as Maddie. He kills her off as Maddie. Brings her back as Laura. Then kills her off in Fire Walk with Me. I said, well, then she's due to come back. So,
yeah, yeah,
and so when obviously when the big reveal happens and like Cooper sees her and takes her hand, I started getting these messages going, "You SOB, how did you know?" And I said, "I'm only going by what Cheryl said on the Arsenio Hall show
years ago, yeah.
years ago." Um, I do. When you say people either love it or hate it, I think there's so much going on in season 3 that I think it is conceivable for people to like a lot of it or not like some of it, or or vice versa. I I don't think you can just across the board just say it was awful from start to finish. There's got to, if you're a Twin Peaks fan, there's something in there that you like. There has to be. There's too much going on in that thing. Um,
I agree. One of the other, it was probably, I mean, part 6 or 7, I guess, but I mean, um, I, the first few minutes of the episode were them Hawk discovering the notes in
right,
the bathroom, and
right,
then the next episode, he talks to Truman about it and references Annie
right.
and the dream sequence essentially from Firewalk, and that to me was just like a like I couldn't believe they were addressing this little tidbit from this obscure movie from 1992 and bringing it, it's like you said about even just name dropping Blue Rose. There were so many moments like that for fans that were, I'm sure, paid off on a big
And
level.
you haven't seen my film yet, correct?
Have not. Nope. Sorry.
Okay, well, if you ever have the opportunity, and I said it to you, but if you ever sit down and watch it, you're really gonna like that because it deep dives into that whole little section there.
Yeah.
Um, I knew they had to touch base on that on somehow because there's the Lynch on Lynch book, and the interviewer asked him like, well, where was something like that gonna go? And he kind of mentions references it to it being like if someone went back in the 1920s and said Lee Harvey Oswald or something like that. So I knew that like obviously that was on. I don't know if it was still on his mind, but when he did that interview, it was on his mind. So I was like, well, they kind of have to touch base. I to this day I don't buy the whole Leland Palmer put the notes in the door thing because like anyone would have just ripped them up and flushed them down the toilet instead of unscrewing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I like to think that that's sort of like since Major Briggs was jumping around everywhere, that like maybe he had something to do with it, or I don't know, whatever. I just don't see Leland Palmer in the bathroom after killing Jacques Renault, unscrewing bolts.
See, and you know what? It didn't even occur to me at first that they were implying it was Leland. My first thought when I saw that scene was that it was Philip Gerard, because
Right,
there's the big scene in the series where he's
right,
having that seizure
right,
in the stall. So
right.
I thought maybe somehow he had acquired the pages, or planted them or something.
I mean, that would have completely made sense considering the fact that he's there at the train car and there's ripped diary entries around him and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
that would make sense. But um, all right. So you say you weren't part of the fandom. Did you start getting involved in the Twin Peaks fandom at season 3, or were you still kind of hands off and like, you know what, this is kind of a private, personal thing that I like to enjoy by myself? Or when did you start getting involved with, like, I don't know, touching base with people in the fan community?
Well, that would have been as of 2015. So by the time the premiere came around on that weekend, I was pretty well entrenched and had met a lot of people, and we'd kept in touch online, because that was essentially my third year out there, was
Right.
2017, right? So and we all stayed at a, we had an Airbnb, and up in the woods, and it was fantastic. So yeah.
Eating at the diner, that type of
Oh
thing.
yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you've been there. I mean, it's just so much fun to hang out for that
And
period.
the food is good too, which helps.
You know what? I opened a diner myself, and it was pretty basic. It was, homemade burgers and home cut fries and things like that. It was right up my alley for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so when did you come up with this idea to do this virtual, would you call it a virtual event, conference? What would you refer to it as?
Right. So, I mean, throughout the course of, I was actually, well, so I was 15, 16, 17 was the premiere. I went out one more time in 18, and there were a lot of events happening that weekend, because there was the actual fest, which the last couple years I went, I didn't purchase tickets. I just went to hang out with people and my friends. And um, that was just as an aside. That was one of the critiques I had. I mean, I've done conventions all my life, and I've done particular circles. I was a vendor at a lot of them, up here in Western Canada, and traveling around. Um, but my one critique of the fest in general was that for the price they charge, there was really no incentive or drive to go a second, or to purchase a ticket a second time around,
Mm.
because it was the same itinerary. Um,
The prices were escalating, but it was the same event, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly, exactly. So it was more about just going to see your friends at that point. So I bought 2 tickets, went at 15, 16, and then 17, 18, I just went to hang with friends. Um, but now I lost my train of thought. Where were we going?
How you were built up to create your event.
Yes, and that's what I was saying. Sorry, is that in 2018 there was a lot going on that weekend, because there was not only at the fest, but there were alternate events going on. So there was
Well, Twin
lots
Peaks
of
fever
stuff
was
going.
back. It was back.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah,
and now it's like Lynch talked about in 2000. I feel like I mean, it depends on what day. You get me on a good day, I'll say the interest is there. We talked about prior to the show, that, like, that, there's thousands of people who were really interested in the show and all that.
yeah,
And then there's other days where I go, it's dead as a doornail. It's like
yeah,
I've,
yeah, yeah.
it just depends on what day. But like sometimes you'll see a post that gets like 2,000 likes, and then another post that's just as good gets 3. So
Yeah, I know, I know. It's really strange. It's really strange, but yeah, ultimately, I mean, so 18 into 19, we were approaching a time where, of course, we all know what happened in early 2020, but
right.
things had changed, and a little bit to do with what you said about the mania surrounding season 3, CBS paying a little more attention to what was going on up there in the
Well,
Pacific Northwest.
they shut down the US Fest, and then to a lot of people's surprise, the UK Fest followed,
Right.
which honestly surprised me considering that it seemed like, okay, again, I didn't go to either of the fests. I apologize, but I did follow them online. And it seemed like in latter years, it seemed like Showtime and CBS seemed more interested in the UK Fest. It seemed like they were putting a little bit more effort into it, and maybe there could be other factors for that. So I was kind of surprised that the UK Fest followed, considering that it's overseas. These people aren't coming to the Pacific Northwest, so it's their own little thing. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting turn of events, but yeah, there was a year or 2 leading into a pandemic that I think a lot of things were in flux,
right.
and there were a lot of changes behind the scenes,
So
and
let me just ask you this, because I'm
Mhm,
sure you follow everything that I do. So when you hear that, okay, prior to the pandemic, David Lynch was working on continuing a story,
mhm,
and other actors, like, even I know Kimmy on your event said that she didn't speak with any knowledge, but Andrew did ask her about, Andrew from 25 Years Later did
yeah,
ask her about, like, do you think Twin Peaks is done? And she said obviously there always could be more. But then she said, I think the pandemic really threw in, kind of messed things up a little bit. So even though she says she's not talking about from any authority, there's so many clues and hints to suggest, even the Hollywood Horror Museum's tweets that came out, right around the pandemic time, that something was in the works. And it could, I mean, who knows what that is, but something was in the works that I think went beyond just Lynch, Ray Wise, and Zabriskie hanging out at another restaurant having a film conversation.
mhm, mhm.
Um, where do you stand on that? Do you think, 'cause sometimes I get the feeling like, Lynch is such a in the moment person that, a couple of years goes by, pandemic's still going on, he might just look at it and go, eh. Or do you think he's still, like, committed to this idea that whatever it is, he'll follow through on it?
That's a very good question, and I remember, when Part 18 aired, and of
Mhm,
course, I mean, we're all familiar with that last hour,
mhm.
and, we all, of course, have, thoughts and feelings on it. But I sort of said in my mind that the way it ended,
Mhm.
um, indicated to me that there had to have been more to come, and that maybe if it had been a little more successful on Showtime, they would have greenlit another season right away. And having said that, I also felt that they had maybe even by the time that aired, that last part 18, that Mark and David had something mapped out as to where they could go. Not necessarily, an
Well,
outline.
that final episode does play like a backdoor pilot for
Yeah,
another another
yeah,
season. And Showtime came out, like, right after season 3 saying, "If David wants to do it, we're open to it."
yeah.
Do you think that was just cordial, or
I
do you
think
think?
it was because I don't think that the viewership was there. I don't think the numbers were there from everything I could tell.
Well, we
Um,
had a replay of season 2 viewership, like, the first night. I thought it would take, like, halfway through the season,
yeah,
but I saw on Twitter that first night people jumping off from that premiere, like, about an hour, and people were like, "I'm done with this." So it was like, wait a minute, people are already jumping ship, like, and I think I said this because I remember thinking to my wife, or with my wife, that, well, they're probably going to start, with, like, a new mystery or something to kind of bring in the new folks, and then bring in no, they just deep dive straight in with Cooper and the giant first scene. And I thought, this is great for me. This isn't great for the new fan, because nobody understands what the heck's going
that's
on.
very true. Very true. Yeah, yeah. And for as much as he encouraged people to go back and watch Firewalk, I mean, yeah, I mean, even that was such an obscure. I mean, but think of it like this: as a first-time fan, okay, so season three's coming out. You've heard David Lynch say, "Go watch Firewalk," but if you've never seen the original series, Firewalk is off-putting. I,
And
I,
that
I
one wasn't on Netflix. Seasons 1 and 2 were, but not Fire Walk with Me.
yeah, yeah.
So,
But
and I
so
still
yeah,
maintain the missing pieces had to be released, because I think the missing pieces, like, gives you more clues about season 3 than
yeah.
some. You right?
Yeah, you're right, you're right. Yeah, no, absolutely. All
Um,
very strange. Missing pieces again, and I'm gonna circle back to Annie
right,
and that whole mythology. We see Annie after all these years because we knew there was a wrap up, a follow up. It's
right,
something shot for Firewalk, right? And of course, because that was I think what was a letdown in Firewalk for a lot of people is the people who had hung in there and watched the entirety of season two
right.
were looking for resolution to, of
Well,
course,
that
that.
Annie sequence you see in the missing pieces, again, watch my film. You'll
Yeah,
really get a kick out of it.
love
But
it.
if this came out, if Fire Walk with Me came out now, that Annie scene would be a post-credit scene. like, after the end credits, all of a sudden, boom, the hospital and Annie gets,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I was so happy because, obviously, like you, huge fan from years ago, and following the petition for the for those deleted scenes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be on the DVD. No, it's not. We're gonna get this awful 25-minute retrospective documentary that apparently the editor had extreme ADHD, and I couldn't even follow it because Kyle would or Peggy Lipton would say something interesting, and then halfway through their sentence they'd cut away. Right? It drove me nuts. But I took what I could get because I was like, I want this on DVD.
That's
Um,
right.
and
I forgot about that entire campaign. That was rampant for 10 or 15 years to
oh, it,
release
it was like
release
98,
these.
99. The internet was still
Yeah.
new, but I
And
remember
every
going.
every DVD release that came out, it was like that was the buzz. Is that, oh yeah, are they going to do it? Are they going to include it? Right? Because we'd all seen stills from them.
Right.
We knew footage was shot. Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
But there was also rumors, and maybe you'll remember this. I'm sure if John Thorne was here, he'd remember this too. But like, there were even rumors at the time in 1992, after the film came out, that Lynch was going to put out a full version on VHS when it came out. And obviously that didn't happen. But there were rumors about that happening even as early as February of 93. And there was no real internet at that point. So I was like,
Oh, oh,
how did I hear about this? But I remember that happening. And I was also shocked because Fire Walk With Me did not have a copy uh, protection code on it. A lot of VHS, you couldn't go VCR to VCR. There was no code in Fire Walk With Me. So I was bootlegging that thing like crazy back when I was in high
goodness.
school.
I God, I haven't thought about that in years. It was called Macrovision,
Yes.
the encoding. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
But
even
New Line
ran
did
into
not put it in there. New Line did not put it in there.
it's funny even talking the history of Twin Peaks on home video because
Yeah.
I used to they actually released the series on Laserdisc.
Yes.
And the
In like
entire
five boxes.
yes, and they were
$300 each at
I know
Suncoast.
I owned the first one, and that's in 1994.
With no
To
pilot.
come up with $200 or $300
Yes.
was a lot of money.
But
But
the
yeah,
covers were cool, right?
yeah,
The covers were cool, especially the last one with like Cooper like tripped in the Black Lodge and it had like the little sliver of Bob,
right, yeah,
But yeah, $300 at Suncoast. I was like, oh no, 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 no. And it was like for 8 episodes. It was
yeah,
like, the Annie Blackburn arc. Here you
yeah.
go.
But do you know what? It must have been. I mean, thinking about it now, it must have been the first series that was released in its entirety on home video. One of them.
Well, it was because there were so few episodes. But didn't Star Trek Next Generations get some discs too? I thought maybe not the full
Well,
season,
yeah,
but
yeah, but I mean, they were very. They'd release 2 episodes on a laser disc every 6 months. They started with
right.
Next Gen, and
Let me tell you something. I was so ticked off. This is so petty, I know, but I was so ticked off about Twin Peaks being pulled off the air
yeah,
and all stuff that I boycotted the X Files. I didn't even watch it. I was like, no, they stole this. I don't care. They bring back David Duchovny. Come on, folks. This is,
yeah,
now I own the whole thing on Blu-ray. But in 93, 94, I was mad because I
and
remember
that's
reading that. I remember reading Harley Payton talking about. I think it was 1990. Oh, ABC, they were so happy about the pilot of Twin Peaks. They signed Kyle for 5 years. And I was thinking, what the hell would season 5 of Twin Peaks look like in 1995? Right? I mean,
oh my God.
that's crazy talk. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, and of course, I don't know. I mean, I liked the movie. I was very mad though when I read that like they cut everybody out. I was like, no, why? I mean, I understood why, but he had a 2-hour and 15-minute. He could not go over 2 hours and 15 minutes US theatrical, right? He
runtime.
went
Yeah.
up 2 hours, 14 minutes, and like 45 seconds. The guy went right. And I still maintain that if he had a 2-hour and 30-minute runtime, he would have probably gone to that. Because there's so many of those missing pieces where you're like, that kind of needed to be in the film.
Mhm.
Like even something as simple as like before James pulls up to pick up Laura and the dad comes home, right? And he's walking up the stairs. And there's that really tense moment. It's like, yes, it's important because it's tense, should be in there, but it also the series says that Leland was at work he's the one that called Laura from Ben Horn's office. So to show that he's not at home when she's leaving is kind of, at least for
Mhm.
me,
Yeah,
in continuity purposes. I was like,
yeah,
because in the movie it implies that he's just been home the whole time. So anyway, uh, so you, so okay, so you see all these events, you see it's coming and going. What makes you go? When did you get this idea to do the Wyndham's Cabin?
yeah, yeah. And we sort of got sidetracked there. Sorry about
It's
that,
okay.
but
It's okay. It happens all the
this
time here.
has been fun. This has been great. Thank you. So the idea, sitting here in 2022 now, after the world has changed, we've all been
Right.
through so much, and we've learned so much about each other, and compassion, and tolerance. The world is a different place. I mean, I have so much hope, uh, and faith in the world, Cameron. But I mean, there's so much unfortunate news, from day to day to day, every time you tune in, and my heart just goes out to so many people in the world. I'm so thankful, to be simply living in Canada, during a lot of this.
I got very happy when I read the other day that Canada's debating about letting in American refugees. Because I'm like, I said to my wife, I said, one more election and we may be heading up north.
Yeah. Yeah, you're all welcome. I've been joking about that, yeah, since 2020. All my US friends are welcome here. I'll put them up in the backyard, whatever I need to do. So, but ultimately, so last year, I'm also heavily involved in another series called Space 1999, which is an old 70s British TV series. And last year in September, see, I'd been planning a live in-person event in London, England, since 2019. I made the announcement, and then the world changed, and so that was originally going to happen in September of 2021. Had the delay, of course, but I came up with this idea, me and a few others, to do a virtual event, and it would sort of tide things over for folks and fans who had already purchased tickets, thinking this thing was going to happen in London. So we put together this event. It ran over 8 hours last year. We had a number of the guests and celebrities on from the show, of course. And this is, for as old as Twin Peaks is, 1990. This show going back to the 70s. A lot of the guests and actors that are still, they're some of them are in their 80s and 90s, but they're
Well,
all
and
so giving of their
right.
time, and so gracious for the fans. And they were, we had over 8 hours, I think, and very few glitches as well. We had 28 guests scheduled, and 23 out of the 28 showed up. Right.
Is this
So
for is this for Sunday's event or are you talking about the
this
previous event?
this was a year ago when I did it for Space 1999.
Okay.
So it was a big success. Anyway, we raised a lot of money for charity. Very happy with the outcome. And so I sort of, into this year, um, I jumped on a Zoom call back in probably late March or early April with some fans, some people I'd stayed with in 2017, 18. And it had been a while since a lot of us had been in touch, had seen and chatted with each other. But there was and we talked about things like the state of the world, and things we've seen happen, and how it's affected each and every one of us. But there was a sense of, what, and we talked about, some of um, some of the beefs and issues that people had. I mean, nobody was immune from it. I mean, everybody lived through it. Everybody saw that there was some friction, there was some tension going on between certain folks and groups. But you know what? I got the sense that it was time, and a lot of people were willing to just put that behind them and leave it in the past, and say, "Let a spade be it." Um, what's that
So,
saying?
some people theorize that the ending of season 3, I say this half jokingly, of course, that the end of season 3 split the Twin Peaks fandom into the White Lodge, Black Lodge,
Yeah, yeah,
and not in terms of like, how you were receptive to it, but like those who went with it, were generally happy people. And then the people who kind of got consumed by it went to the dark side a little bit. And
a little bit for sure. And it goes back to what I was saying about, I knew it was going to be very divisive,
right.
but ultimately, I felt that, earlier this year, that it was now was a proper time to try and I don't you see, I'd already experimented with the platform that we used for broadcasting, and I was, I'd sort of gotten that side of it down to a science. So I knew I could handle that, and if I had a couple good hosts, I could easily apply this to Twin Peaks fandom. this idea of the live stream, and it sort of took off from there. It all happened very quickly. I mean, but it all came together in
So
6 days.
when did you have this idea, and then I mean, this was just only a few days ago that you
Yeah,
did this, but like
yeah.
how fast did this all come together?
So I'd say within 6 to 8 week period.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It
Um,
also helps that you didn't have to find a location to host this.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
So
technically, like I said, I had that end of it covered. I knew I could run things. All I needed was really a good host or two to
and guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, I had a great group of people sort of jumped on board and helped with the planning and organizing of things.
All right,
And
well, let's give a shout out to some of these people. Who was the first person that you reached out to that really that said yes, I'm on board, and was a tremendous help to you?
well, that's fairly easy. And this gentleman was sort of a part inspiration for me pulling this off because he had done something similar himself. And when I got to the time a couple months back where I was wanting to run some test calls, he helped me out and came on, and it was looking like he was going to be the primary host if I pulled something off in July, which I had that time frame in mind. But that was Scott Ryan.
Okay,
Um, and Scott had done his own pandemic sort of live stream event a
I
couple years
remember.
ago, and I saw him post that he'd like to do it again, but he'd never do it on his own. So I reached out to it because I knew what it was like. This is not a one man proposition, right? You
Right.
need a good team, you need people in place. So actually, it was Scott that got us going with the idea of running a couple of test calls, and then I reached out to a few fans, and
But
because I wanted people to.
I don't
Sorry,
remember
go.
seeing Scott. I don't remember seeing Scott on Sunday.
Yes, no, he wasn't involved with Sunday. Unfortunately, he had to back out ultimately, but we ran some test calls with him, and
Okay.
we included people like Andrew and Colin,
Right.
but Scott ended up unfortunately having to back out just because his schedule just has been crazy, and he was knee
He's
deep in a
too
new
busy
book
running off those color editions of his Fire Walk With Me book.
and now Lost Highway. He had a new project dropped in his lap a couple months back. So, but no, Scott was a big help, and it was sort of got me going and saying to myself, well, it's easy enough to be done with a good host or two. Ultimately, I mean transitioned into people like Andrew and Colin, Josh Minton, and Josh Eisenstadt, of course. So they helped us out on Sunday, and then I was able to manipulate and coordinate things behind the scenes, as you know, with bringing people on and off at the proper
Did you
time.
get the guests through them? Did you reach out personally to the guests? How did you get the Twin Peaks people in?
It was actually a combination, so it was a collaborative effort, and we all sort of had ties and connections, which we brought together, and were able to steer and direct people to our official email account, Wyndham's Cabin, right, to finalize things and to set up appearance times and things like that. So it was the group of us that sort of worked together to pull all these people together nicely.
So Wyndham's Cabin, where'd you come up with this name? Because I think it's fantastic.
You know what, it was just something that, of course, that we've seen various groups and pages down through the years that um, are reminiscent. And again, you sort of walk the line with CBS and legalities when you use the name Twin Peaks. They get a little more. They pay attention. Things get red flagged a little easier, I think. But yeah, as we all know, if you know if you're a little more obscure with naming your events, it's easier to get around certain loopholes with licensing and
Well,
copyright
they
like that.
don't even. I mean, Wyndham Earl wasn't even name dropped in season 3, so I don't think they're worried
No,
about that.
no, I know, but it's ultimately it was something that's instantly recognizable to the fans that isn't going to necessarily set up any red flags at CBS. So
No, but it's a great like in the know kind of name. Um, so you coordinate this thing. It runs, I believe, 6 hours, or did you right?
yeah,
Um, I was involved for about I was on for about 20 minutes or so, but I was talking for about 10. It seemed like it went off really, really well. I saw nothing but love and praise in the comments, and I spoke to you briefly before, just because you said come do a test call. So I jumped on and caught you right before you were gonna get in the shower, I think. But if you ever do this again, one, I would love to be involved, but two, I also can put you in touch with a lot of people who I know, you know, not that they, I'm speaking, they didn't ask me to say this, but like, there's a lot of people in the Twin Peaks community that are, they either run podcasts or do videos or have done analysis stuff. And I know they would be thrilled to help out wherever possible. So if you ever do this again, I've seen hints that you might be interested in doing this again. I can definitely help you get some incredible guests.
Well, thank you very much for that. And again, it just goes along with that earlier sentiment that this was collaborative. And I really I got a very nice. The whole experience was just so pleasant working with this crew, and there was no ego that got in the way. There was it was all. I mean, we were all on the same page. With, of course, the charity aspect was nice, but it was about coming together and putting together something so special that so many people would enjoy, and nobody had really done before on a virtual level. Number one, and then the other factor, I think I even mentioned this on the stream, was just the number of first time attendees that I had seen. I mean, we all, Cameron, we all sort of have this tight knit group of, say, 200 or 300 people that you and I all know, and
Right.
active members. But there were so many ticket holders who had never had the opportunity to travel to a live event before, let alone
Right.
the Northwest.
Right.
And they were so thankful and grateful to have this opportunity to interact with some of their favorite personalities for the very first time. So that was very, I really appreciated that as well.
Well, I think that, everybody across the board that you got for this event was just the right people. You had the right guests. And so it just, I was in the middle of watching my son through some of it, but every time I would pop on and look at it, everyone was talking and smiling and laughing and having a good time. And I honestly can't think of a better event than that. Um, I mean, obviously, I don't want to go into to a large extent, but like you, I put together a project, and a lot of goodwill, a lot of people, came together to help me with my project as well. Queen of Hearts, if anybody hasn't seen it, but but there is that occasional pushback in the fan community, and I bring it up because I know that you've seen a little bit of this. I haven't seen it, but you've expressed to me that there has been a little bit of a pushback and stuff. And I feel like we feel it more because, unlike, let's say, Star Wars, that has such a huge fandom, if somebody says something, whatever, there's like 80 million people talking about it. But because Twin Peaks is such a close, tight-knit thing, it's like if somebody says something, you either see it yourself because it's on your timeline, or it's shared with you because everyone's so close together. So you kind of like see it more, and it feels a little more personal because, like you said, it feels like only 80 people or so talking about it. This was done for charity. This was not done for ego. You talk about how everyone came together, without trying to grandstand. They all came together for this great cause. You raised a couple $1,000 for these charities. I'm curious, what's your take on, again, it's something I haven't seen, but you talked about, some potential pushback. What's your take on pushback against something that was done that brought nothing but happiness and smiles to people and money for charities?
Uh, Very, very good question, and I will um, skirt some of this lightly, but I've got no. Of course, I mean, in anything you do, I mean, this was to be expected. I saw this last year when I did the other show, the other event. There are just inevitably uh, egos and personalities who are outspoken and opinionated, and they may tend to hold or sway a little bit of influence with a particular circle of other people, other fans, and
Are you talking about gatekeepers?
boy, I tell you, I I have used that term quite a bit in the last 7 days here myself, and you know what? It is what it
I
is. Like
affectionately referred to people as some of them as the Twin Peaks elites.
listen, we all we're all trying to make a name for ourselves, but I also saw somebody online here just the other day break down fandom and the way everything should be compartmentalized, and that's quite simply, you worked on the show and you're on one level of status, or you didn't work on the show and you're a fan just like everybody else. Nobody is better than anybody else. Nobody should be. Nobody should think of themselves that way. We're all just fans. I mean, and I will say, I mean, in my mind, there's certain exceptions to this, right? And when I throw out a name like John Thorne, I don't think anybody can deny that his contributions, because we talked about um, the dark ages when there was not a lot going on. I
But his
mean,
Wrapped in Plastic was there.
right, right. So there's certain exceptions, and we were really happy to involve him, of course, and um, but ultimately, yeah, there's so many people who maybe think of themselves a little more highly than they should, and this gets in the way of things. It's sad, it's unfortunate. Um, I mean, like I said, from my
Well,
own personal experience, I knew sort of to expect this going into it. I just wish that overall, I mean, whereas a lot of people did come to this event after 5 years after living through a pandemic and say, hey, you know what? I might have had a beef or a bone to pick with so and so, but you know what? I'm big enough to let it go. Enough time has passed. We've all grown,
that's
and
called maturity.
exactly, exactly. And a lot of people did. I was very grateful, Cameron, right? A lot of people did do that. Ultimately, though, not everyone. And the people that haven't been able to get over certain things, unfortunately, have brought things down, a
And
mark or
again,
two
I'm
for
not on
everybody.
any of these pages, so I don't see any of this stuff. I can only say that um whatever it is, that's ridiculous. But you're not alone, because a lot of good people have been put through the ringer to the point where I've seen some people saying, I'm never going to watch Twin Peaks again because it's ruined the whole
I
experience for
know,
me.
I know. I
And
mean,
that's really a shame. That's really a shame, because you don't want people who make the experience horrible for you to feel like they own the show, because they don't. Um, and we're all fans here. Some of us, you put on this event. I made a film. Other people do podcasts. Some of us are just consumers of the fan content and we love it. Some of us produce our own fan inspired content. Okay. But at the same time, it's like we're all in this together. High School Musical quote there. Um, so I don't know. It's a real shame. But I'm regardless of that, I just wanted to touch base on that just so that we acknowledge it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but
It
I'm
just
but but I
it's
am
like I said.
super
Yeah,
but I
go
am
ahead.
super thrilled that one, you pulled this off. Two, the people who came together with you, you know, did it with the best of intentions, and it seemed like everybody across the board had a great time. I've seen. I remember saying, "Hey, I'm seeing people post this on Twitter. Are you on Twitter?" You're like, "No, I'm not." And I'm like, "Well, people are posting about this, Colin and people like that, you know." And I saw nothing but happiness and likes. And so when you talk about like you've seen some, things, in the peripheral dark edges of the fandom, I haven't seen that myself, and I'm somebody who's always looking for the dark edges of the fandom.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So,
and you know what I mean. I said earlier. I mean, a lot of things in my mind with this fandom and this community come down to black and whites, and the other one I'll just touch on. And again, I'm not, like I said, it's inevitable. I expected it. It's a way of life within any fandom, but in this case, I mean, I'm going to put it in black and white terms, um, succinctly, and just say, um, either you were big enough, as you mentioned, mature enough to be able to move on with things in your life and support us, or um, you're not. And I feel sadness. I feel a little pity for some of these people, because in this case, it wasn't even so much about personal agenda. It was supporting a charity or not. And
Mhm.
and in my mind, I mean, regardless of what's gone on, even if you were not in support of our event, if you were a good and compassionate person, you still could have purchased a ticket to support the charity.
Well, I don't
But
understand how anybody could not endorse the event because it was a lot of cool people coming together talking about a show we all love.
and I mean, the last thing I'll say on this is that, and again, I mean, no names. I'm not begrudging anybody, but there was a public boycott of our event. There were people who intentionally did not buy tickets, i.e., did not support a charitable effort because of personal agenda. And I feel that that is just quite simply despicable in my mind. And to publicly state this. I mean, this wasn't something within the
So
secret.
this isn't just like, private text message threads that you may have gotten privy to or something. This is out in the public for people to see.
Absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely. So I'm not spoilers. uh, this is public knowledge. This
Spoilers
this
for hateful posts online.
this was done in public forum. So
Wow.
so there's no way they can take this back. There's no way they can deny this, right? And that's on them. Like I said, I mean, it's I'm in the here and now. I mean, this was all going on over the last week. We got through it, like you said. I mean, all I'm doing at this point is focusing on the positive.
Mhm.
I mean, the comments that have come in from people, like I said, from all over the world, that we're so grateful and so appreciative of things. All of our guests. Let alone the panelists and guests, everybody was through the roof with praise and accolade, and so I'm very proud of that. And I'm just, you know,
Well, as one formerly blacklisted Twin Peaks fan community member to another, I'm proud of you too.
Well, thank you. I never thought it would get to this point, but whatever. No, it's just what, like everything in life, Cameron, is
Yeah.
it's 90% good, but it's the 10% bad that just it's hard not to dwell on it, but and let it bother you and take it personal.
You're right.
But you just got to separate yourself from
Right,
that.
because
And
it's not just the fact it's like, "Oh, some people like it, some people don't like it." Like,
yeah,
that never bothers me. It's when the people who don't like it try to use considerable sway to try to get everyone they know to not like it too, and then therefore it's like, "Okay, is it I don't know anything about you. I have nothing personal against you. Why are you attacking me personally?" And of course, if you say this to them, they'll be like, "Well, it's not personal. I just, well, it's like, yeah, well, I have like a list of messages and that got sent to me privately that show me it is personal for whatever
yeah,
reason." So,
yeah. As do I. As do I. They can gatekeep. They can virtue signal all they like.
well, you
Um,
know what? Right now, unless Lynch decides to do something else, they're going to be gatekeeping until Jackrabbit's Palace is nothing but a stub in the woods.
Yeah, which
And it,
unfortunately I've heard that it has been already beaten up and run down a little bit,
yeah,
which is really sad.
yeah. Um, yes, I do want to say though, a minor plug for my film. We did get to shoot
Nice.
Jackrabbit's Palace before it disappeared.
Awesome, awesome.
So
That is
so
on my Friday night agenda, by the way. You asked me earlier. I have not seen it yet. I have not had time, honestly.
I'm
I'm
gonna
sure you
just say
can
this,
appreciate.
if you're a Twin Peaks fan as much as you are, I don't see how you don't watch it and at least get a little bit of the feelies because it's just it just you can just feel the love that we all have for this project for the the show, the movies, everything, the whole world. Um and the and just I as much as I've seen the good, the bad, the sweet, and the sour of and I never was part of the Twin Peaks community until I started doing these videos. For a long time, it was just kind of like, it's a show I love, and I kind of kept it to myself because nobody else around me knew about it. But then when I started talking online and started meeting other people, it was great. I I will say this though, is like I even if nothing ever happens again in the Twin Peaks world, I am so happy to have met so many of the people in this because if it wasn't for the internet, I wouldn't have met so many of you. We wouldn't be talking right now. We don't even live in the same
Right.
country,
Yep.
right? So I will always be grateful for a little TV show from 1990 that has given me so many great friendships. And when I talked to you the other day, I was like, I've never met you. I recognize your name. How do I know you?
Yeah.
And I think I'd maybe just seen you a little bit online, but no, hearing your backstory, I'm like, of course I've seen you before, all over probably Facebook before. I'm so happy that we met, honestly, because like you're super cool and like you seem like you were right there through the thick of it, just like I was at the very beginning. You remember the Macrovision, the laser discs, and all that stuff. So we remember the
Yeah,
dark days, the true dark days of Twin Peaks. Do you remember? I've talked about this before on my show, but the TV Guide posted the entire synopsis of Fire Walk with Me. It said they did a whole. That's how I found out about the movie. I had no idea the movie was being made until they said Lynch and Bob Ingalls gave TV Guide the shooting script for us to preview for you. And I'm like, my God, how things have changed when like nobody but Kyle MacLachlan has seen the script for season 3.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
TV Guide and Film Threat magazine each got the shooting script hand delivered to them from the production house.
I
And
don't
like
remember
it
that at
says
all.
in the TV Guide, David Bowie is playing a time traveling FBI agent, and Chris Isaac is playing a time bound Fed, and we're gonna see threesomes with Laura and Ronette and Teresa. And I was like, what the hell is this movie gonna be about? And I kept thinking, oh God, Roger Ebert is really not gonna like this one because he hated Blue Velvet, he hated Wild at Heart, and I was like, oh God. I mean, he didn't even review Firewalk with Me. And if I could pick a little Scott Ryan, I read your book. First page it says Roger Ebert didn't like Firewalk with Me, and I was like, he didn't even review Firewalk with Me, Scott Ryan. So maybe he'll change that for the new version, but because there's lots of critics who didn't like it. But I remember reading out the first page, going, "Oh my God, Roger Ebert didn't even review it." But anyway, anyway, your event was awesome. I just have to say. And I'm so thrilled. And I hope you do it again. And I hope you don't wait a whole year, because obviously if you can throw this together in 8 weeks, you can do this at least twice a year.
Well, thank you, and thank you for saying, Cameron. Thank you for being a part of it. And I know, like you had mentioned, whereas with me, I was working a lot behind the scenes. I missed a lot of those comments that were coming in, but I went back and reviewed them. And even during your segment, I mean, there were a lot of people out there who really appreciated your efforts and everything you brought to the table with this film.
One name I'll give a shout out to is Frank, who was in the comments a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
I don't know if you know him or not, but he runs a YouTube channel, a live from the Roadhouse, and he's interviewed so many people from the Twin Peaks. He's done songs with Kimmy Robertson. He's done music with John Neff. He's definitely somebody you got to have on your show because he's a great guy.
He was part of the yeah, he was definitely in the comments, but we hadn't been friends on Facebook up until I think Friday.
He's one
And
of the good ones.
he even got back to me afterward, as several other people did, and just
Yeah.
thanked me
Yeah.
in a private message saying it was fantastic. This was
Yeah.
phenomenal. A way to go. Good job. And I just want to say again that, I mean, and thank you. But to all the people out there that were helping behind the scenes, and you know who you are. I could not have done this without you. Um, I'm just so thankful and so grateful for everybody and all of their efforts. And even aside from the idea of coming together and putting a lot of stuff behind us, it was the focus and the drive to just do something good that hadn't been done for a good cause, and putting all the BS in the back corner where it belongs. So thank you again to you all, and all of our not only guests but panelists like yourself, Jason Weber, Bob, Anton, who were on the segment together, all of the podcasters. Like, we were really, really happy. I think it turned out very well to have the diverse amount of content throughout that 6 hours. We
Right.
had Thor and his film, right, which was fantastic. Authors, content creators, and of course the celebrities. It was a really
And I
nice
like your
mix.
scroll saying coming up next.
Yeah, it's just something simple, right? To
Yeah. Yeah.
to make things look a little more professional. Yeah, yeah. So it was
Two
a lot of
que-
fun.
two
Sorry, go ahead.
two 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 sort of final questions.
Yeah.
When you make the donations to the charities, is it going to say Wyndham's Cabin or is it going to say Wyndham Earl? Please have it say Wyndham Earl.
I never even really thought about that. It's and you see on that, I mean, we've still had donations coming in even this week, which is fantastic. And so we haven't even gotten a final tally yet. And when I said upwards of 1,500, it's probably going to be closer to two at the end of things.
So where can people see this if they missed it? Because there's a lot of people, I guarantee you, missed it.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, the event is still available to anybody who would care to support the charity with a $35 donation or ticket purchase, if you like. And you can still do that via the event page, which is called Wyndham's Cabin, the virtual experience. There'll be a PayPal link, PayPal.
And it's all in Facebook.
Yeah, it's still on Facebook.
Right.
But if you make a donation or purchase a ticket, then you'll be added to a private screening group where the event has been archived and you can watch it back at your convenience.
Because some people
But
don't have Facebook. So I just want to.
well, I know, and there was a couple people. We're still working on that. I've got a way to send copies and versions of it to anybody who doesn't have Facebook. No problem.
Okay.
So there's workarounds to it. I just ask that. I mean, the whole idea is that I I don't really feel this should be necessarily posted on YouTube or anything like that. Out of respect for the people who did support the charities,
Right.
I'd like to keep this as more of an exclusive. Okay, a lot of people are going to be using clips and snippets of the show. I got no problem with that, right? But the entire 6 hours, I think, should remain a little more exclusive, just out of respect for the charities and for the attendees.
But if you
So
are on Facebook, this is how you can reach him, Warren F. Friedrich. And then obviously this is the email you can reach him to if you don't.
yeah,
If you're
so
not on Facebook.
that's the email. But yeah, you can still go to the event page. It's still live. The VIP group is still there. If you want to see the event in its entirety, you can still make that donation, no problem. And as far as doing it again, Cameron, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, annually would be, my preference because I'm actually doing another one for Space 1999 in 6 weeks in September again. So my schedule's yeah. I mean, once a year. I mean, I'm happy to entertain it, and
Well,
I think
there's always new Twin Peaks people, new
yeah,
fans, new
yeah.
podcasts coming out. You'll never not have the talent there.
And I think it'll be all that much easier next time out as well because of the good press and buzz that we have gotten this time.
Right.
That's going to telegraph into next year. It's going to be that much easier to sell just as many tickets, if not more, and do another a nice event for charity. So yeah, and
My
and
fi-
thank
like,
you for being a part and offering to be a
I
part
was a small part. I was there 10
down
minutes.
the
Come on.
road. But down the road, I mean, this has been a really great experience, and even
Oh
between
yeah.
you and I've really appreciated things and working a little closer together. And this, you and I both know this can lead to some really cool things going forward.
And also it's just nice to have sort of like a tight, group of people who, you know, one, love doing this kind of stuff, and two, enjoy the show and the world so much. Okay, this is my final question for you because I don't want to keep you here all day. But you saw, I mean, obviously you're a huge Twin Peaks fan, huge David Lynch fan. Is there? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are there? Let's just say three things from the event that you didn't know prior to knowing now. And I don't mean like the putting on the event. I'm talking about were there three things that a guest said that made you go, I didn't know that,
Hmm.
or at least one.
Well, there's so many, and again, a lot of this was flying by, and honestly, I haven't gone back and rewatched it yet. um, but I think I'd have to chalk it up with it, and if I could roll that all into one. I mean, it was not so much what anybody said, but it was just the overall uh, perception and feeling during right. It flew by in a moment's notice, and I was just so focused on, of course, coordinating things and making sure that everybody showed up on time and that everybody got on and had their say. It was just a very humbling feeling overall for me personally,
It
and
felt like the season 3 premiere all over again when people were generally happy.
thank you, and that's a very good way to put it. I never thought of it like that, but yeah, if we did some good, um, just in the sense of making people smile and giving them some enjoyment. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway for me, and I think we did that. I think we knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely. 100%. So yes, get in touch with Warren for future events or just touch base with him. Super great guy. Obviously, you've just spent 75 minutes with the guy. He's awesome. So thank you, Warren. I really appreciate it. And make sure to get in touch with him. As for us, obviously follow us on Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. It's been a real pleasure, guys. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, follow us for more David Lynch Twin Peaks content and other stuff coming out soon. And we will see you soon. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Take care and bye-bye.